And we're back. Hello, everyone. Welcome back to Highly Intelligent. I'm Calum.
I'm Jared. It's been a few days.
It's been a few days. We're back. We have a document that we wrote. This isn't going to be a very traditional episode. We're going to have a guest speaker on, but she is unavailable at the moment. So we decided to talk to you guys about some of our core values and some of our core beliefs. So we have compiled a list of 10 rules about living your life. These are our personal experiences and what we've gained from them, so we hope you guys enjoy the listening of them. We're going to discuss what they mean, why they're important. So Jared, if you want to take it away and read them down.
Yeah. Rule number 1 is darkness and light are both clouds, both of which can be navigated and both of which need each other to exist.
Yeah, so the concept behind that is I feel like it's a very Buddhist kind of thing, because their whole thing is the yin yang, and that you can't have just half of a yin yang. It's got to be black and white. And so the whole idea is that you can't have any concept of dark without having seen light before that.
Yeah.
And vice versa. So if you look at it that way, it's they're just sort of the same thing but opposite ends of the spectrum.
And darkness and light can also represent a lot of things, and even just the physical form of darkness and light, both of them can be navigated through, and there's nothing in it that's going to hurt you. And the metaphorical way is, if you have darkness in your life, you can still navigate through it, and it's not the end for you.
Right, it's just a mindset.
Yeah.
Alright, so rule number 2 is enjoy the little things. So this is pretty basic. This is more just pay attention to little things in life and take care of little things in life, and most importantly, enjoy the little things in life.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, because you're never gonna get anywhere by making this huge change to your lifestyle and think that that's gonna change your behavior, because it's not going to. It's taking the time to do little things like housekeeping, or just enjoying the way it feels to walk around a pond or something. Just little stuff like that, and taking the time to do that, that's really important.
Yeah, and if the little thing is just taking 5 minutes to go look at your dog or something, you should enjoy that.
Yeah, definitely.
The little things like that, when they build up, they make your life better. And if you think about it, little moments like that, if you didn't have them, then what meaning would your life have?
Right, life has to have substance before you actually enjoy it and can look back on it.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
So rule number 3 is society will put ropes on you from the time you're born, determining what we can and can't do.
Mm-hmm. So this is going a little bit more technical and probably a little bit boring to some people, but this kind of relates back to the social contract and the idea that people give certain things to society in order for society to accept them. And so the whole idea is from the instant that you're born as a person, you're always kind of being trained to do what the general overarching society wants you to do.
Example of that is people walk on sidewalks. If you're walking in the road, you're gonna start gravitating towards the sidewalk and not the grass or staying on the road, even if there's no cars.
Mm-hmm. Even if a street is empty, you feel better about walking on something that you've done before.
Yeah.
But you never think about it.
And there are other things that society puts ropes on you, when you're... What's another example? I can't think of anything. This was the best one we had.
Well, I guess really, you can look at it just wherever you go when you're around people, or where you're anywhere, really. When you do something, you can always take a second and just think, why did I do that? If you're walking past someone and you feel weird about making eye contact with them, has that ever happened to you? Where you're walking past a stranger and you kind of avoid eye contact, and if you make eye contact, you look away really quick.
Yeah.
Why is that? Are you afraid that they're going to attack you if you make eye contact for too long? Maybe. That's a big fear of yours, but it's probably not going to happen. it's more like you're trained to be uncomfortable around strangers, because like parents are always kind of hammering into your head like, don't trust strangers, like don't talk to strangers.
But how are you supposed to get to know people if you don't get to know strangers?
Yeah, exactly.
Not everyone is bad.
Mm-hmm.
There are people that are bad, and you just gotta look out for them.
Yeah.
Which brings us into another rule we have. When you feel odd about looking in some direction, look in that direction and state why you didn't want to look at it in the first place.
Yeah. So this kind of ties into the third rule.
Yeah.
And it's this whole idea that, again, like you're trained to want to look certain ways. Like even if it's in little ways, like there are just certain areas that you feel weird about, like looking in that direction, like walking in certain directions.
Yeah.
And a lot of the time, I think that's because you're trained to do the thing that's easiest for people to manage.
Yeah.
Like in a town, like police will have the easiest time keeping track of you if you're staying on sidewalks and if you're staying in the town. So you feel weird about going off the grid. Like some people enjoy it and some people do it, but like the main conscious flow of people is always going to like gravitate towards those areas.
Yeah. Like if you were to look at a crowd of people, it would make you uncomfortable. But it's not like the crowd of people is all staring at you.
Mm-hmm.
You just don't want to stare into the crowd because that's not what a normal person would do.
Right. It seems like creepy or weird.
Yeah. A normal person would just look at their phone or look at the ground or just look straight ahead. But who looks into the crowd? And it's not being weird, you're just not following society.
Mm-hmm. There's also like just taking the time to like admire things, like look at, again, like the little things. I've noticed that a lot of people like never really do that, and it's like there's kind of, it's not just, I feel like society is kind of just like peer pressure on its own. Like it's this silent cloud of peer pressure that kind of like hangs over people. Because like when you're in a group, there are certain things like that, you know, if you do it, like you're kind of gonna fall out of the vibe of the group, and it's gonna like make the situation weird. Like,
Yeah.
I'm sure that's happened for you, it's happened for me, and like it's one of those things that just kind of builds up. And the point is, you should always like take time to observe the little things, even if it doesn't really feel like the thing that people want you to do or people would appreciate.
Yeah.
If you want to do it, then you should do it. You shouldn't care about what you feel like you're being pressured into following and what track you're being set on.
Yeah. And the next rule, rule number 4, is you don't know a person is the way they are until you can see them living their personal life without them knowing you're watching. And that's just dipping one toe into a full ocean.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can see a person living their life, you get a deeper understanding of why they are. Like, we came to a realization about, we just automatically make assumptions about people. Like, if they're super energetic, their personal life away from the public is probably like not as energetic, and they're always like under control of something else.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I feel like it also like depends on the individual, because
Yeah.
every life is like a series. It's like it's like a machine, and every little like cog is a different shape, and like if it's a little bit of a different shape, then like the whole life is different. So basically, like the whole idea is that unless you've been in someone's life, unless you've like, you know, walked in someone's shoes, like you really have no idea of like why they act the way they do otherwise. And like you get so used to like seeing how people behave at school or at work or on the street that you don't really question like why someone says something a certain way or why someone thinks a certain way, but there's a reason for it. And you can't really understand that until you've actually been with that person and like lived what they lived or with them.
Yeah, and you should never like make assumptions about people just based on what you've heard or how they act, because you never know what is going on in their mind. Like if they're super extroverted, they could be living a terrible life at home.
Yeah,
and
that could just be how they express themselves because they can't do it otherwise.
Yeah, you would never know.
Mm-hmm.
And that also leads into rule number 6. Treat every problem as if it's a person and acknowledge it and get to know it and always give it the benefit of the doubt.
Yeah, so it's like the idea of whenever there's something bad going on in your life, or like whenever there's, again, a problem or some sort of situation going on, like it makes it like 10 times more difficult to deal with it if you think of it as this huge, like, celestial happening that you can't stop. But if you treat a situation like a person, like something that can be interacted with and like talked to and respected and acknowledged, like it becomes way easier to manage. Like
Yeah.
you can see it with a completely new perspective and treat it differently.
And if you treat a problem like if it's just weighing over you and there's no point in dealing with it, and that like there's nothing you can do about it, you're not gonna solve it. You need to learn everything you can about this problem, and you need to
Take a lesson away from it.
take a lesson about how it's changing you and what it can do for you in the future and how it's good.
Yeah. And that kind of leads us into the next one, rule number 7, which is pain is all in the mind. So you can take pain and you can acknowledge it and you can move on from it and you can learn from it.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the time, like, let's just talk about physical pain for a second. Let's ignore, like, the huge amount of, like, emotional, psychological pain, whatever. That's, like, a whole thing. Let's just use physical pain as an example. So if you burn your finger on a candle, technically, when you feel pain, it's your body's way of telling you, yo, cut that shit out. Like, you're damaging us. This isn't good.
Yeah.
And, like, that's just from years and years of, like, development. And so the whole idea is that pain is just to make you stop doing whatever it is that's hurting, or, like, to get yourself away from that situation. And it's good to listen to that, but at the same time, it shouldn't be something that you're afraid of. Like, if you're always afraid of, like, being in pain, and, like, if you are constantly worrying about the fact that pain is happening to you, you're missing the point of what pain is doing. Pain is just there to teach you what you should and shouldn't do. It's not something that you should, like, lose your mind over. And if pain is, like, super intense and, like, your brain gets messed with, that's understandable.
Yeah.
And, like, you should try to avoid that. But fearing pain is never the way to go, because that's only going to make it, like, 10 times worse.
Yeah.
The best way to approach it is just realize that it's in your brain, it's in your mind, but you can deal with it.
And that also goes towards mental pain. And if you're having really deep mental pain, struggle, problem, then just acknowledge it's there and see why you have that pain, and then learn from it, and then move on and figure out how to solve it. And it may not seem easy to solve it, but once you acknowledge that the pain is there and acknowledge why it's there, it'll be easier to figure out how to solve it.
Yeah, acknowledging a problem is the first step to solving the problem.
Yes. And it all goes back into the other rules about society putting ropes on you, and it's like all a big mental struggle to overcome things that make you uncomfortable.
Yeah, and I think it's such a big thing. Like, people don't even realize, like, sometimes people don't even realize that they're ignoring certain things. Like, there are entire directions, like, to the sides of your vision, like, that you could turn your head a little bit to look at, like, metaphorically and physically. Like, there are always instances where you just don't realize that you're ignoring certain things.
Yeah.
And that's a huge part of, like, growing as a person, is, like, taking that time to think, okay, what am I missing here? Like, am I taking the whole situation into account? And, like, taking that time to kind of, like, move your head from side to side in every sense of the word, and learning from what you see.
Yeah. Rule number 8 is realize that life is not static, but ever changing and ever shifting. Realize that life is a dance, and learn to dance to your own tempo. You make the tempo.
Mm-hmm. A big part of this, and this kind of ties into everything else again. This whole list is sort of, it's still a list, and it still categorizes everything, but the basic idea is that you have to go after things, and you have to, like, do the things that are scary to you. and the things that you don't think of doing. And this is sort of the idea that, like, no matter what you think, you can't just sit in a chair and, like, expect things to stay the same while you're sitting in that chair. Like, just because you're not moving doesn't mean that life is gonna sit with you. Like, life is always changing. Even if you think that, like, if you could get it just right, you could make it so that nothing would ever go wrong. Like, personally, I don't believe that that's how life goes. I think there's always going to be a problem that pops up to challenge you. No matter where you are in life, there's always going to be something.
And it also can tell you that you decide how you live your life.
Exactly.
No one else or your problems or society can dictate how you live your life. If you want to pinch a candle with your fingers, do it. Pain is all in the mind. If you want to stare into a crowd of people, you do that. You don't let society tell you that's not okay.
I think we'd like to quick disclaimer right here. We don't advocate anarchy, and we don't advocate self-harm.
Yeah.
All we're saying is don't fear the things.
Yeah, don't purposely hurt yourself. Just don't be afraid of being hurt.
Right. Because it can always be a lesson.
Yeah.
And don't be afraid to get help with that. Because that's a big part of getting through it too.
Yes,
and that could be
definitely.
part of the lesson.
Rule number 9 is a big one. Darkness and silence are things to be appreciated, not things to be feared.
I feel like this happens a lot. I feel like a lot of people feel this. So people are always like they're afraid of going away from lights, especially like if it's nighttime, which is understandable because, like, you know, fear of the unknown and fear of like what could be in the darkness. But at the same time, like, if you are careful, the darkness can be easily navigable. Like, navigatable.
Navigatable?
Is that a word? Navigatable.
Yeah,
Sure, navigatable.
Yeah, navigatable.
If it isn't a word, it's a word now. We made that word, navigatable. But yeah, it's something that can be navigated through.
Yeah.
And if you're careful, it's just what it is.
And if you really sit in the dark and don't worry that anything is going to get you, it's really nice to just turn off your sight and just listen. And it's so calming and peaceful.
Yeah.
And you can get a lot from it.
This is a huge phenomenon with blind people.
Yeah.
A lot of the time, people who lose their eyesight and people who don't see as well, their other senses are extended. Because when you aren't distracted by all the things that you look at, like all the colors, all the movements, all the distractions, anything that's happening in your sight, once that's gone, the rest of your senses, like, have to strain. Like, you're able to focus on them way more, and you realize there's way more to them.
They have to make up for the loss of sense.
Yeah, exactly. There are some blind people who... There's one blind person, I totally forget his name, but there was a documentary about him a couple of years back, and he essentially learned how to use echolocation to find his way around, like, his house. He could play basketball fine, because he was able to, like, use that sound and realize, like, okay, if I'm nearer to a wall, that sound is going to be louder, and if I'm farther away, it's going to be quieter.
Mm-hmm.
Just because of how sound bounces.
And silence is also a thing. You don't need to completely rely on your sight or hearing. Silence is a beautiful thing, and I know I sound like a mom when I say that, but, like, it's true. If you just sit in the silence and the darkness, and it may seem scary, but once you can get past that, it's a beautiful thing, really.
Yeah. I think it's also the fact that, so darkness correlates to light, and again, silence correlates to sound. And I think the more that something is silent, the more that you can appreciate when an actual sound happens.
Yeah.
Like, if you're in a silent room and you hear a pin drop, you hear that shit, like, immediately. You know where the pin is. If you're in a crowded room where people are talking and the pin drops, you don't hear anything.
Yeah.
So that just goes to show, like, that the darkness emphasizes the sound. And when you're in a dark hallway, one light, like, it looks... You see it so much clearer and so much better because it's the one light. So they relate to each other, and, like, that's what makes them both so important to each other. So you definitely shouldn't... And silence can put emphasis on different words. Like, in speeches, when people pause, that usually means something.
Yeah.
And that's usually, like, an important part of it. It, like, increases tension or gives people time to reason things out.
And our final rule is every friend is a potential enemy and every enemy is a potential friend. You may have heard this before, but it really correlates to life. Like, yesterday, I went over to Calum's house, and we were hanging out, and I was petting his dog, and his dog bit me right on the face. Just bit me. I was like, okay. And then, by the end of the night, I was laying down, and the dog and I were cuddling, and it was really nice.
Just so my dog doesn't get murdered by certain services, it was a little dog.
Yeah.
And it was a very, very little bite. Please don't take my dog away.
It's not bad. It didn't hurt.
Yeah,
She was just
when you started talking, I looked at you like, oh, what are you doing?
she was fearing the unknown,
Yeah.
just like everyone in society does.
Mm-hmm. It was a very hectic situation, so.
And it can relate by every enemy that I make, enemy being the dog, became my friend, and every friend is an enemy, which meaning my friend, who I was cuddling with, the dog, could snap at any point and bite me.
Right. It's like a cycle, and I think that's what I like about that rule so much, is that when you say, like, every friend is a potential enemy, there's always the potential for, like, getting betrayed, or, like, something, like, changing. But then that also means that change can also be changed back. Just if you look at it, it's always about perspective.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Well, to conclude the episode, we're gonna talk about a writing prompt.
Let's see, I believe I have the book.
I've decided which one we're gonna talk about.
Oh, you did.
We're gonna talk about being a fly on a wall. So if you're a fly on a wall, whose wall would you be on? Or what wall would you be on, and why would you be on that wall?
Does it have to be a wall? Can it be a ceiling?
Sure, yeah. Like,
it's a very odd question. Like,
yeah.
How do you want to go about that?
Like,
do you want to go with the creepy route, or?
Yeah, it could go a lot of ways.
I'd want to live on the wall of someone who's a pacifist and someone who doesn't have any fly swatters. I feel like as a fly, you wouldn't really have like any want to be on anyone's wall. 'Cause, like, you wouldn't know anyone.
I think if I were transformed into a fly right now and I kept all of my smartness, and I think I'd want to be on like someone interesting's wall, like somewhere where there's a lot of like people and happy energy, and like I would be able to observe it every day. I mean, at least for the 2 days that I live.
Yeah. I'd want to... Let's just say, like, maybe this is more of a metaphor for just being, like, an eye in a wall, you know? Like, being able to, like, see from any wall in history. I would love to sit on the wall of, like, a really inspired painter.
Yeah.
Like, someone who takes the time to work on one project for, like, years and years. And just, like, see that project, like, grow and grow and grow and see what happens to it. I feel like that would be really interesting.
Yeah, definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Well, those were the 10 rules written by Calum and I. And we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we'll see you next Friday. Or, well, not see. Hear.
You'll hear us. We won't see you.
Yeah, yeah.
We hope we'll see some of you. We hope you're enjoying the show so far. This episode was a little bit impromptu. It was a little bit not as well planned as the others, but we did have it in the making before. So we are getting better equipment sometime next week.
Yeah,
we're gonna be using that. So you can hope to hear better sound quality. So yeah, you guys have that to look forward to. Next episode, we're gonna be talking about. We still have to come up with a topic.
Yeah. I don't know what we're gonna talk about.
We'll let you know.
Yeah. Well, I'm Jared.
And I'm Calum.
And this is Highly Intelligent.
There you go.
And we'll see you next episode.
Bye.
Hear you next episode.
Bye for now.